Listen up, folks. If you're interested in supercharging your social powers, say goodbye to awkwardness, say hello to charisma. Whether you're aiming to ditch the awkward vibe or shed the arrogant aura, I've got 4 key ways to unlock your social potential. Number 1, you're gonna want to start with a stupid question. Now, you always, as an individual, want to overthink everything. You want to think, oh, like, what is the best, like an icebreaker? What is the best thing to say? Like, how can I be funny? Just ask a dumb question. I'll give you an example and even a story behind it. This is a little bit of background. I'm a waiter there and there's a bartender there, right? So this bartender seems extremely smart in every single spirit. Like, he loves cocktails and that sort of thing. Now, a lot of people view him as a geek. I see the positive in it. I see, like, this individual knows his alcohol. He knows what he's talking about. So how could I learn from him? Well, I just need to show a little bit of interest, right? So I asked the stupid question. I noticed these 2 books sitting on the bar top. And I said, oh, like, what are these books about? As on the 2 books, it says books about cocktails, right? It's like, he comes over, he's like, oh, like, this guy that made a bar years ago, and he just kept going on about this book. One thing led to another, and I kind of just left the conversation there. He went back to work, and I left knowing I planted a seed of, like, hey, I'm interested in what you're interested in. Like, I think it's pretty cool. Now that we have this foundation, I kind of overhear maybe a few days later that, like, the 2 bartenders and, like, the manager are talking about how I present myself, how confident I am, like, just how I'm able to speak to others. They see it with how I speak to tables. And again, now I have the bartender vouching for me because he's like, wow, this guy's cool. Like, he is interested in what I'm interested in, so I'm going to speak well of him, and then everyone else around them is going to speak well of me, right? So we end up at a tasting one day. We have the common interest of whiskey, scotch, and I want to say they're cordials, but they're not cordials. It starts with a C. It's a sweet liqueur. We end up having a few drinks, and that's that. That's the end of that, right? We kind of go our separate ways. Nothing really happens. We just kind of shared the moment, enjoyed mutual drinks. The day after, now he takes a step to show interest, right? He's like, okay, like, this guy. I found it extremely funny, but this was his way of showing a friendly gesture. He, like, pulls me aside. He's like, hey, come here. Let me talk to you. And we head to the bar, and he pours me, he has this 2-ounce, this guy's quite timid, quite shy, quite quiet. He's very reserved. And he puts this 2-ounce container on the bar. He pours a pre-batch made old-fashioned into it, and he just gives it to me. Absolutely no context whatsoever. I have no idea. I look at him confused. I'm like, why exactly am I drinking this, right? Like, am I being set up to be caught drinking? Like, no, he wouldn't do that. That's like my intuitive, I guess, defense mechanism, right? So I start drinking. I'm like, oh, this is good. And then in the back of my mind, I'm starting to think, oh, maybe this is like a friend gesture, like that he associates giving me a drink or a taste as like a here, like, I'm giving to you back from, like, our mutual, like, interest of, okay, we both like whiskey, right? So I drink it and I kind of walk over. He's kind of following me. He's like, wants to see if, like, I'm enjoying it. So I give him the validation. I say, oh yeah, this is good. Like, this is really, really mild, really sweet. I'm not too big on old fashions personally. I just think they are ridiculously sweet. But I end up finishing up the old fashioned, and he's like, what'd you think? And I was like, oh yeah, I enjoyed it. It was great. Thank you. And he goes, he kind of takes a step back. He realizes the situation's a bit weird because I personally don't really care for alcohol to that extent. Like, I don't really drink like that. And he can see that I'm, like, maybe a little bit off guard because I'm not one to drink in general, and especially if I'm going to be at work, I don't want any sort of depressant like that in my body. It was, it was a taste, so it wasn't overdoing, but it was a friend gesture at the end of the day. So I was like, oh, it's fantastic. He's like, oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like, now you can say you've tried our old fashioned. And I was like, oh yeah, like, that was my first time. Thank you. I appreciate it. And we left it at that, right? But you can see these stepping stones of me showing interest in this individual and him going out of his way to provide a friend gesture, because now he wants to be my friend, right? So anyways, that's step number one. You kind of just want to ask a stupid question. Let's say you're at the gym. He's like, oh bro, like, is this chest machine pretty good? Maybe you can play off that dumb question. Or maybe you hop in the sauna and you're like, man, it is hot in here. You hot in here? And they're like, yeah, dude, it's fucking hot. And next thing you know, you're talking about some MMA fight coming up for the guy, or where, how long he commuted, or like how often he comes to this gym, or like this sauna is so different from the other sauna at the other location. That little icebreaker that's like, oh wow, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, we're just two people talking about an event. It transitions to so much more. Tip number 2 would be all ears. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of bad listeners in this world, right? If you ever get in a conversation with someone and they're just like, you're speaking and they go out of their way to speak over you and they just really want to get their point across, those people aren't very great conversationalists, and you end up leaving that conversation almost feeling like, wow, I didn't get to say a single word. Now, there's a lot of beauty in it because there is mutual benefit in, just like that story, how most of the time I didn't really do all the talking. He kind of like, he's already a quite timid guy, but I let him do the talking on the cocktails and everything, kind of feel like a dumb individual in it and not try to outsmart him. Either way, I learned a ton in the interaction just simply by listening to him. And it makes him feel like he is smart in that field, because he is now telling me all these things. And sure, maybe I could be an asshole and be arrogant and be like, oh yeah, well, of course, like, who doesn't know that? But you kind of have to take a step back and like appreciate the few things you actually learn from it, and like appreciate the fact that they're going out of their way to share all these details with you, right? So in a conversation, you want to be all ears. You want to be the listener. You want to be the one, in a sense, benefiting from the conversation because they're able to share their values and you're able to learn. If you're the one to least talk in the conversation, you're probably the winner in it. Number 3 would be find common interest. Just like in that story, the interest was alcohol. You want, as you break the ice, as you start talking about things, you start relating. You start slowly building this field because you two as individuals are in the same atmosphere at the same time for a specific reason. So if you both hit the gym in the morning, there's a reason you both hit the gym in the morning. Perhaps the rest of your day is taken up and you unfortunately can't hit the gym later. Or maybe you work out late at night and you're like, look, I like to work out late at night because if I work out in the morning, the rest of my day, I feel the brain fatigue because it fries your brain. So you can start talking about that, and then you can talk about like what you do throughout your day to be so productive, and tons of conversations you can have. Being at this grocery store and like bumping into a bunch of different options of pastas and like talking to someone beside you, oh, like, do you like pasta? Some dumb question. Of course people like pasta. And they go out of the way, yes, I'd love pasta. And you're like, oh, like, I'm struggling to find out which noodle I should go with. And now you're sharing with them. You're just asking a question, and they're going to probably spill this whole lecture of pastas that they know and like how they were out in Italy, and you can benefit so much from it, right? Mutual grounds, mutual interests. The pasta, you both like pasta. You're both there for a reason. And the final one would be just make them feel important. You see, with my story, the whole time, they are important to me. They are my bartender. They are the person I trust as an individual to know about spirits. I know, of course, about spirits to an extent, but I'm sure they'd kick my ass any day in spirits because I don't work with spirits as much as he does, right? So you kind of have to break your ego down and realize other people are smarter than you in different fields. You do not know everything. You will always benefit from learning from someone else. Learn from others. It's the best way of learning. And make them feel important for it, because people will always take the time to learn different things that they are extremely interested in. So if you take a step back and you share that interest in them, they're going to feel important, they're going to feel appreciated, they're going to want to be your friends. You will learn from them. It's all mutual benefit. And that is how you overcome loneliness. You will make friends this way, you will gain knowledge through others, and you'll just progress in life. If you're interested in more videos like these, I'm just going to be having stories to tell from my day-to-day life. And I'm just going to share my experiences in life. If you're interested in that, subscribe down below. Maybe comment if you have an opinion on the topic. And leave a like to help me out with the algorithm. I'll see y'all next time.